Welcome to the Dream Power Show. I'm your host, Debbie Spector Weissman, the Dream Coach. If there's one question that's uppermost in people's minds these days, it's this. How do we navigate through these challenging times in a way that gives us power, hope, and healing? Believe me, I know it's hard, especially when it's so easy to slip into negativity and despair. That's why I've been seeking out experts who can help us rise to become our best selves. And today, I'm honored to welcome another authority, my special guest, Cyndi Dale. Cyndi is an internationally renowned speaker, healer, educator, and author of 27 books about energy medicine, intuition, and spirituality. Her latest book is Energy Healing for Trauma, Stress, and Chronic Conditions. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Cyndi.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here, even though we're going to talk about things like fear.
Oh, believe me, and that's actually one of the first things I do want to ask you about. Because Cyndi, like I said, I've spoken with so many people since this pandemic struck. They all see this as a time for us to look within and to rediscover our true selves. But the one thing that often stops us in our tracks is fear. So my question to you is there a remedy for this? And if so, how do we tackle fear in a way that empowers us?
That's an important question. And I do have to admit, I have been applying my own ideas to myself because when we were first put in lockdown, I was in shock, as I think most of us were. And some people are in increasing shock because this is a mobile issue. It just keeps moving and shifting, which life does anyway. Like, if we're really honest, it's all about the fear of uncertainty. And if we're even more honest, I think most of us have a fear of uncertainty all the time. But when we first went into lockdown, I just became scared. I didn't know, should I go to the grocery store? Shouldn't I? When I went, I found my heart pounding. And it took me a while to figure out how to get back into a centered place and calm myself down. And one of the differentiating factors that I keep bringing up for myself and for people I work with is we really have to discern between healthy fear and unhealthy fear. And I'm sure you work with that as well. You know, kind of having to step back and go, now, let's not blow this off, or let's not, just make the fear disappear or go into a trauma analysis with it if it's a healthy fear. So I think we first have to ask ourselves, when are we being healthy with our fear?
So what is a healthy fear?
Well, healthy fear is how we're made. I mean, if you take every feeling down to what it's supposed to do for survival and love, right? We're here about, we've got to survive if we're going to keep going and be who we are and fulfill our purposes. And we want to make connections. So from that place, if we feel a healthy fear, it's because that fear is giving us a message. We're supposed to stop because we're not safe. Something is not safe. A person's not safe. A situation isn't safe. Maybe an idea that we hold isn't safe. And at that point, I think we've got to go, okay, if this is a true feeling, a statement, a message, I need to figure out how to go forward, backward, or to the left, or to the right. So, and then the fear is supposed to disappear if we act on it.
Well, does it?
If it's a healthy fear, right? Like, and I know that after a crisis, we usually go into shock. The bigger the crisis, the bigger the shock. And we're able to act, and then we feel the fear afterwards. But it's a healthy fear because we really were in danger. And let's say, we've got two events we could go to, and everybody's in a different state of open, lockdown, illness, etc. But we're just going to talk the virus, SARS-CoV-2 for just a second. Okay. So let's say there's two situations. I can stay at home, or I could go to a friend's where they're promising to socially distance. They're promising to be good. You bring your own food, etc. So if I'm tuning into those two situations and I feel much more comfortable staying at home, and I get this gnawing fear if I think of going to my friends, as soon as I decide not to go, that fear should disappear. If it doesn't disappear, that's not really the issue. And then I have to do some deeper dive to figure out, what's this fear trying to show me? Do I have old trauma? Am I feeling other people's feelings? Because sometimes when we feel scared, it's not really our fear. It might be somebody else's. Or it could be a childhood issue or an adult issue that's just locked in place. And, we also pick up fear from our ancestors. So I think 80% of what we think of as our issue or our emotion often really isn't. We're just the tip of the iceberg.
So before you said that, taking action is a way to help dissipate the fear. And I think that always comes into play in so many things, that when we're emotion, we're not letting our thoughts run us. We are running our lives. We're not letting our thoughts run us. And I think that plays a big part in it. But you said something before about other people, and I'm thinking of, I mean, one of the things that so many people have said to me is, you just turn off all media, because media is just going to scare you. But, we're human, we live lives, we'll turn on the news and hear something that's obviously going to scare us. Or, our friends or our loved ones will say things that, will show their fears. How do we keep ourselves from absorbing fears that come from other people?
I think that really is a key. And for some of us, we need a certain amount of data to feel safe. Like, I don't want to feel like I'm just in a vacuum. I know that my type of personality, I'm very empathic, I'm very physically based. So, and I am visual and verbal, but I gauge my place in the world through my sense of my body and, how I'm feeling, satisfied, not safe, not, and all of this. So I don't watch the visual news because that imprints me too much and it terrifies me. But if I don't have a certain amount of data, I just get it off my iPhone, then I feel scared. So I think some of it is we have to figure out what type of person we are. Are we more verbal, visual, empathic? What do we need to let in and what do we need to keep away from? But honestly, I still think that these are methods and means and avenues, as well as hanging out with other people or being on the phone or a Zoom with them, that we just can get overloaded with their issues, with their feelings, whatever they are, their physical pains. If we get together with people and pretty soon we're crying and they used to be crying, we've absorbed their fear, their feelings. If we get together with somebody and they have aches and pains and suddenly we do, or we go to the movies and everything that happens to our heroine or our hero, we feel in our own body. I mean, we're an empath. So we just have to own it, because then we can take some steps to ask ourselves, like, is this mine or not? And use various energetic techniques or even our dreams, to kind of like flush out what's not ours. And how about making a decision? We're not going to pick up what's not ours anymore. Sometimes we just have to make a decision too.
Well, getting back to things that are ours, that belong to us, um, isn't it true that there are things from our past traumas that give us fear? And even not only just past traumas in our lives, but even in our past lives, I mean, we may not even be aware of on any kind of conscious level. So how do you deal with that?
Exactly. Well, if you can't get rid of it, like a situation like a paranoia or a fear, or fear of dogs, fear of riding in airplanes, fear of small spaces, fear that, this invisible virus is going to get you no matter what you do. If anything feels too big, then, I always like tell somebody, first ask, for grace, first ask to be flushed by guides or your spirit or what you believe in of anything that's not yours. So I start there. And then what's left is yours. So if you can track it to a childhood event, then you work on the childhood event. Like, I used to be scared of dogs, and my mom told me, well, you know what? When you were like a year and a half, you crawled under the neighbor's fence and the dogs attacked you. So that's pre-verbal. But once I knew that, I sat in a few minutes. I envisioned my little child self and I said, it's okay. You're done with that. You're out of that situation. You're big now. You can be protected. And so you don't need to be scared of dogs. And I've had dogs ever since, in my own adult life. But you're exactly right. Past lives are a rich basin of our fears. I worked with a woman, and I'm sure you've worked at these levels too. I worked with a woman who was terrified of flying, and there was no reason. And we did a past life regression, which you can do on your own. You can get quiet, drift back, or ask to have a dream show you something, or do some writing, or be in a meditative state and open for signs for a few days, or what have you. But she actually, and this one was a big one, she actually remembered being an angel. And she's flying around having fun, not a bird, she was an angel. And somebody got her, like a fellow angel, maybe not a very nice one, was jealous of her and clipped her wings, and she fell to earth. And that's how she remembers coming to earth. So in that fall were all kinds of secondary feelings like, oh my gosh, I'm abandoned. Nobody, they're not looking for me. Now I'm trapped. So anytime she was in an airplane, all that came back. And until she had this story, she couldn't go in an airplane and just go, you know, this is just an airplane. I'm not falling to earth and stuck here forever. I'm already here. I'm already here. And when is my time? It's my time. And in the meantime, I'm just going to sit here, you know, and read a book. So we can look at past lives, and, you know, sometimes our ancestors' issues are alive inside of us too.
It's up to us to acknowledge that, discover it, and then we could start the healing process.
Exactly. I encourage people, I mean, when you're dealing with energy, which is physical, but most of it's really invisible and subtle. I mean, you're not constrained with healing. You don't have to just heal your inner child or your current situation. You can send healing back to who you were a long time ago. You can send healing to your ancestors. One of my favorite techniques is somebody's feeling like something their ancestor went through. Maybe they know an ancestor went through the earlier pandemic, you know, in this century, or, you know, maybe they went through a pandemic that, you know, my client in a different century altogether. You send healing, you ask for healing energies to go to whomever had the original trauma, you, an ancestor, maybe even your spouse, and you're picking up on your spouse's fear. So healing goes every direction. So it's important, I think, and exciting and empowering to know that we can deliver healing energies across time.
Cyndi, you were talking about how, you know, we can do things to boost our immune system and you know, help heal ourselves. Just on a practical matter, do we do this? Do we get ourselves into a meditative state, or do you do this through hypnosis? How does that work?
I usually like to get myself or help a client get into a meditative state, but you can do that really quickly. I'm very what the world would call ADHD. So I'm not going to do any of my own exercises for even 10 minutes. I like them quick. And so, you know, so I use a three-part practice that I call spirit to spirit that gets me into a meditative state really quickly. And then I can get out of it really quickly if I need to as well. You know, you can do it sitting at a stoplight, but not when you're driving, kind of a thing. All right. And I always start by first, I understand that we are all spirit. We all have our own spirit or immortal essence. I do, others do. There's visible and invisible spirits, you know, people and guides, and some kind of greater power, whatever you want to call it. You know, and you don't even have to believe in something outside, just a goodness. And so when I'm going to get into a meditative state, I just affirm or acknowledge my own spirit. Like I feel that inside that I am going to be my best self in this moment. I'm immediately calmed down. And then if I'm alone, I acknowledge that there's helping spirits that are positive and uplifting. If I'm with somebody, I acknowledge their spirit, like say if I'm in a session. And then my third step is just to acknowledge and surrender to something greater. And as soon as I do that third step, I'm open. I'm ready to make declarations, to do any psychic visualizations.
How can people find out about you and your work?
Oh, I have a website like most of us do. It's cindydale.com, CYNDIDALE.com. It's just spelled funny. If you spell it funny, you'll find me.
We've been speaking with energy healer and author Cyndi Dale.